All right, I don't know what time it is on your clock, but I know what I'm getting ready for. It is time for the Professional CISO podcast with David Malicoat.
Welcome, one and all, to the Professional CISO Show. I'm your host, David Malicoat. This show is an exploration of the topics necessary to transform the role of the CISO into that of a professional. All right, gang, today we have an interview with a cybersecurity leader in the digital banking space. His roots are in product lifecycle software, financial services, retail, and healthcare. Pretty cool. Pretty wide. Some notable things about our guest today. He's an avid motorcycle rider. Love that. I've had my license since I was 16. Love riding motorcycles. There's nothing like wind through your hair. That's a joke. He loves working with tools, and he's a tinkerer. Love that, too. But before we get started, I want to put it out there again. We got the second annual North Texas ISA Golf Tournament. It's November 4th with a noon shotgun start. It's going to be at Hackberry Country Club. The format is a scramble. This one is this is the primary way that one of the primary ways that they get the funds for scholarships and for the students in the region. So come out, support that. If you're a vendor, consider sponsoring it. If you're a practitioner, participate. If you're anyone else, volunteer opportunities, support it any way you can. Put the word out there to people that you do know. Reach out to board member Kevin Haft for more information. I believe his information is on their website, or you can reach out via LinkedIn. And join the largest ISA chapter in the world. And they work to go and help build this community that we have. So appreciate that. Also, please like, follow, share. We've had some great fortune with this. We've had folks that they've mashed that button on YouTube, LinkedIn, as well as Spotify and Apple. So hit that subscribe on YouTube. We love that. Follow us on that LinkedIn. Interact with us. We like that. We like those questions. We like that feedback. And share us with a colleague. You like what you're hearing. You see things good on LinkedIn. Let us know and share that with a colleague. All right. So now it's time to talk about being a professional CISO. Today's episode, our guest is Anand Singh. Currently, he is the SVP and CISO at Alkami Technology. He's held positions at U.S. Bank, Target.com, United Health Group, and Caliber Home Loans. Please welcome Anand Singh.
Thank you, David, for the opportunity. I do want to reaffirm what you said about ISA. It is an amazing chapter here in DFW area, and what a noble cause.
Absolutely. Love that. Thank you. All right, so we're going to start a little different, because normally we kind of jump right into your history, but I found out yesterday through talking with Sean Tuma, a guest of the show, a friend of the show, that your daughter wrote a book about cybersecurity.
Yep.
Okay, so it's called Dev the Cyber Hero. We can see it here. Give me the backstory on this. Like, when did she start it? How old was she? How old is she now? Talk to me all about this.
Absolutely. So David, she was interested in cybersecurity because she saw me do this for a living. And over time, she developed some interest in it. So she said, okay, I have this opportunity to do independent study in Frisco ISD. So as a part of their high school curriculum, kids can take an area of interest and pursue that independently. So as she was doing it, she came up with this idea that kids don't know how to deal with cybersecurity issues. They may not even know about cybersecurity issues. They play games on phone. They will provide their information without thinking twice, etc. So she said, okay, here is an opportunity. That's what I'm going to do independent study on. She did all the illustrations. She did all the write-up, and she submitted it. I saw it, and the illustrations and write-up was so amazing that I said, Arushi, you should think about publishing this as a book so that people can benefit from it. Parents can buy the book and give it to their kids or read it for them at nighttime when they are trying to put their kids to sleep. So she translated the work into the book. So here it is, Dev the Cyber Hero.
Love it. It's so gratifying to see young people take an interest, number one, in what their parents are doing, right? Having 5 kids myself, totally understand. I think you talked about a little bit, the challenge around that, but then to see that come out and then to support it and to see the uptake on it, I mean, just amazing. So I recommend everybody go check it out. Get it for your kids. I'll pick some up for my grandkids, quite honestly, because they're the age these days. And yeah, I love it.
This is available on Amazon.
Amazon.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. And we'll give a link in the show notes.
Absolutely.
And that way directly to it.
Thank you.
All right. So I want to hear your story about when did you first get connected in with either technology or cybersecurity or both? Was it single digit, Anand? Is it later? Like when did this come about for you?
I have to think back really hard, but I would say I was in grade school and we had our first Apple computer in the school, and we got invited to sit in an air-conditioned room and look at the computer function. We were not allowed to touch it. It was so expensive at that time.
Of course.
So over time, I started paying close attention to that aspect. And specifically, if you remember, David, supercomputers were the rage in the early 80s.
Yes.
And so I started digging into Cray research, the Cray supercomputers. And over time, it just became my dream to go and research Cray supercomputers. I grew up in India, so we had some supercomputers, but not to the degree and scale and computing that Cray provided. So it became my dream to come to the US to pursue research in supercomputing. So as a first step towards that goal, I did my bachelor's in computer science at one of the Indian Institutes of Technology. Mm-hmm. I think everyone in the US knows about IITs at this point.
Yes.
And when I graduated, I got a scholarship from Purdue University to come and do supercomputing research there. I came to Purdue with that ambition, and something different happened. I met Professor Eugene Spafford, fondly known as a Spaff.
Yes.
And Spaff is the founder of cybersecurity as an academic discipline in the US. I loved his style of teaching. It's very juicy is the word, probably. Very engaging. So it just I still retained my interest in supercomputing, but I also started enjoying cybersecurity pretty heavily. And Spaff allowed me to work in his lab, Sirius Labs. It is still the marquee lab in the country on cybersecurity issues. And so when I graduated, David, I wanted to pursue my first passion. So believe it or not, I actually joined Cray Research. That was my first employment. That was like my great dream from 6th or 7th grade, and I joined Cray Research. Worked there for a couple of years. It was amazing. I was writing code for compilers, right? So that's probably the hardest thing that you can do. Yes. You have to write code for compilers. But over time, I also realized that supercomputing is on its way out because anyone can string together hundreds of CPUs, hundreds of compute units, and create a supercomputer. It was becoming that easy. So I drifted into a company called Windchill, which was product lifecycle management company. Easy way to think about it is just like you have software, you have to manage version control. Parts, you have to manage version control too. A golf cart has 10,000 parts. Right. Boeing has like millions of parts, right? So that's the problem that they solved, version control of parts. Windchill was an amazing company. We exited out into PTC, Parametric Technology Corporation, got into Target.com after PTC, built the security for Target.com from scratch, worked there for a few years, worked at United Health Group, solving problems in healthcare space. And then one day, someone calls me from Dallas and says, "Hey, Anand, looked at your background, looks like a really good fit. Would you like to come and work in Dallas?" And sometimes opportunities just like, it works out great, right? I was at that pivot point in my life. My daughter was going from elementary to middle school. My son was still in elementary. I realized if I wanted to make a location change, this is my one opportunity. I won't get another one. So we talked, and Adrienne, she convinced me to come to Dallas. I came to Dallas, and I've been here for the last 7 years, worked at Caliber Home Loans for a couple of years, and I've been with Alkami Technology for the remainder of the period.
Love it. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to jump into the meat of the professional CISO, which is, do you believe in the idea that we got to professionalize this role? If so, what does it mean to you? Because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different folks. If not, why? Again, we're good to disagree or not, whatever you want to do. But what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely believe that that's the way things have to be. The role of the CISO has to evolve. If you look at the history of the CISO role, David, you can see that there is a broad variation. So you have those situations where sometimes very young junior individuals are anointed as CISO. You have those situations where CISO may all report all the way to the CEO in a Fortune 500 company, right? There is that degree of extremes. And if you have to look at kind of how to process those extremes, it appears to me that the opportunity lies on both ends. On one end are the companies who may not attribute enough importance to the role, right? On the other end are individuals who may not have mastered the art of becoming a true executive. I'm going to focus on the second part because that's the crux of your question.
Yep.
A CISO has to be a true executive. And to me, that's what professionalization means. Now, the next logical question is, what does being a true executive means, right? Being a true executive means that you are able to understand the business and you are able to drive the business and use security as a mechanism to drive the business. To me, that's a key part of it, right? Some of the other pieces are how do you communicate your ideas? Can you get buy-in from really sharp executive members of the organization in the things that you are proposing? Do you know how to marry up your proposals with the business objectives so that you can say, okay, if I do this, here is the bottom line impact to the company. And I'll share one example in closing,
Please.
David. I've been with Alkami for the last 6.5 years. It has been an amazing ride, but when I joined the company, it was a really small thing. And we have been through an IPO, and now we are a really big company. In that process, I have sat in every conversation that we have had with our prospects who are buying our product. It's an amazing opportunity to not only understand how the market works, but also how can you influence their thinking so that they consider the product as a product that they want to bring inside of their organizations, right? So that's kind of my take on it. That's what it means to me to professionalize the role of the CISO.
And so I want to pull on or ask a little bit, where does the risk manager piece of this sit in this executive space?
Yeah. That's a great question. So to me, the way I see it is the risk management function needs to be an independent function for separation of duties reasons, right? So a CISO should not measure the risk and certify it on behalf of their own organization. There has to be some separation of that where someone is independently looking at it. So to me, risk management function is broad for an organization. It includes your financial risk and other risks of the company, right? Talent risk, people risk, all those things. So to me, the way I see it is a CISO is a funnel of the cybersecurity risk into the chief risk officer and their organization. That's the way I kind of see the relationship between the two parties.
Got it. Love it. Okay. I want to shift a little bit. Always ask my guests, what are the things that you're passionate about that you want to talk about? Because obviously that's going to get you more engaged, get the audience more engaged.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the intersection of artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. And obviously, AI has gotten kind of a bad rap recently as far as talking about it and all that. Where do these two things intersect? Let's start with the basics, right? Let's start there.
Yeah.
Where do they intersect?
Yeah. So whenever there is an ambiguous drop of something as significant as AI, which is causing the type of disruption that it is in organizations and companies and lives of people like us, I like to look at the problem space and carve it up into independently managed chunks, right? So the way I'm carving up this intersection is in three pieces, right? How can attackers use AI to further their cause, okay? The second piece is security for AI.
Right.
And then the third piece is AI for security. So that's the way I'm dividing up this problem space.
Okay. Can you give me a light touch on each one of those?
Absolutely. So let's talk about the first one. AI has been a very significant tool in the arsenal of the attackers. They are looking at AI and saying, okay, I can use it to solve some of the things that I was not able to solve mechanically before, right? So a great example of that is bots. Now, bots are able to solve CAPTCHAs. And if you remember, CAPTCHAs have been the Turing test for a very, very long time.
Right.
But it doesn't work anymore. The attackers can pay the managers of the bot mitigation platforms. Almost sounds like a business. The attackers can pay those guys to a little extra fee to get artificial intelligence to solve CAPTCHAs. So a lot of like old age techniques about preventing application layer DOS or network layer DOS, etc., those are not relevant anymore because a motivated attacker can get around it. So that's kind of your AI, the utilization of AI by attackers. The second piece of it is security for AI. So I'm not in the camp that you should block all AI initiatives in the company. I know many people are in that camp, and respectfully, I do feel that AI is a force of nature. You cannot block it. If you block it, your users are going to use it anyways. And you, just like shadow IT, now there will be shadow AI, right? So I do believe that we need to provide a framework for users and the organizations to use AI safely and effectively to drive the goals of the organization. And then the last piece of it is AI for security. What I mean by that is that security tooling has been sometimes very complicated. People struggle to use it. They have to be trained up on it. And then given the state of talent retention situation in our industry, you train up someone and then they are gone. So that's where AI can be very effective. And I'm glad to see that many organizations are now tapping into AI to drive their cybersecurity tooling. So Copilot integration is almost a given these days for most cybersecurity tooling. And it can be very effective to drive the utilization and effectiveness of security teams.
Love it. Okay. And so one of the things I've heard recently, I've heard a lot of folks say this, that people in our industry equate AI to technological developments of the past, such as cloud computing or internet, about the same. Does this concept hold true, or is AI uniquely different, maybe requiring a different approach?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. So I'll tell you kind of one episode of my interactions with John Chambers, the former Cisco CEO. I was with him maybe a couple of weeks ago, and he said, in 10 years from now, 60% of the Fortune 500 will become irrelevant if they don't use AI very effectively in their organizations, right? I think of AI as a very, very different thing. If you look at innovation compression, that has been happening pretty rapidly over the last few cycles of change in technology that we have seen. When internet came along, it took like maybe 10 years for it to become mainstream, right? Then e-commerce came along, and it took like 6 or 7 years for it to become mainstream. And so if you look at that, that compression is ongoing. I feel that we are in an age where AI will be like in 3 or 4 years, it will be all pervasive in the industry, in what we do, in how we live our lives. And so that it's that innovation compression, like in a smaller time frame, it's massive change.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I funny, I hadn't thought of it in that context, but you're right. I mean, like dead on. It's one of those, the time frame, the compressed innovation. I'm going to steal that, by the way. I will use that from now on because it is extremely accurate, right? Yeah. And the pain, I guess, a way to put it, that it causes, right? Because it's the rapid change is what makes everyone uncomfortable, the unsurety, and then in turn, hopefully you can make mistakes and fail faster. But then again, if you make mistakes, they can be, catastrophic potentially. So the balance of that. Okay. I'm going to move on now a little bit to the next thing. I like to hit the highlights here. Board governance of cybersecurity. Very simple start as well. What's the current status? Where are we at with this? There's a lot of talk about it.
Yeah.
So where are we at?
Over the years of reporting to the board, and now I'm on a board as well, my general sense is that things are changing, but there is a lot more room to grow. Okay, I think if you look at regulations, SEC and others, these guys are coming out and saying, boards, you have a responsibility to embed cybersecurity governance pretty significantly into your programs. But if you look at the board expertise, you will find that they are still very surface level when it comes to governance of cybersecurity. And in many situations, and I talk with board members and people who report to the boards all over, and my general sense is that in many situations, it's like a chore. You go through your slide deck, and then you get 30 minutes, and then 15 minutes down the road, you are kind of getting asked to speed up and get done with it so that people can move on to quote unquote more important matters, right? So it's not everywhere, but it's not very uncommon either. So my sense is that there is an opportunity for the boards to raise their bar, become more conversant in cybersecurity, and so that they can govern it effectively, just like they're governing the finances of the company.
Do you feel like potentially part of that gap is that we, as the collective, we CISOs, are not that executive yet? Is that part of the equation also?
That absolutely is part of the equation. I feel that the sophistication with which someone needs to manage the conversations with their board, that sophistication is all over in the CISO world. And so you will get those situations where people are nervous and not comfortable. And so their content is going to be all lighter and all rah-rah about the state of the security program, right? So definitely agree with that point of view, David, that I think there is an opportunity for CISOs also to raise their game, become much more conversant with how to increase their executive presence so that they can drive that conversation of the board, brief it much more from a risk perspective and what it means to the enterprise and its business activities, and much less from a firewall status, red, yellow, green type of situation, right? So, yeah.
And so let's flip that on the other side.
Yeah.
You indicated, there's ways to go. So is there a path forward for boards, right, to say, what does that look like to get those boards? Again, we know what we have to do. That's the whole point of the show.
Yeah.
But how do the boards meet us in the middle? How do the boards meet closer to us?
Yeah. So I have a few ideas about that, David. So let's kind of lay that out. Sure. And you'll find, David, that I think very logically. So when I lay out my thoughts...
I'm loving it so far, believe me.
When I lay out my thoughts, they are bullet point.
Absolutely.
So the first thing that I think about is boards should bring cybersecurity experts like yourself, like myself, and people who have lived this world for a variety of industries. They should get some training on cybersecurity themselves. They don't need to operate a firewall,
right,
but they need to understand the construct of cybersecurity as a risk to the organizations and cybersecurity as a business driver for organizations. So you have done it all over the place. So if a board were to call you, you can probably lay it out for them in an hour or two in a way that would make them several times more effective than the routine practice for governing the practice of the board, right? So that's kind of my one suggestion. My second suggestion is that there has to be a path for more seasoned CISOs to get on the boards. And the boards and people who are kind of recruiting for the boards, etc., I would like to drop this seed in their thinking that a very effective way to manage such a situation is to get a very seasoned board, people who have been there, done that from a cybersecurity perspective, bring those CISOs on board into the board so that they can come in and influence the thinking from the inside. Okay, that would be very effective. My third thought is that NACD, National Association of Corporate Directors, they have some targeted training for cybersecurity. In my opinion, it's not very effective to view a training on a screen, but that is also an available resource for board members to use so that they can come closer to the middle in trying to develop a sense for how to govern cybersecurity.
Great. So you mentioned an ACD. I'm going to move right on to the next one because that was next on our list.
Awesome.
You are a member,
Yep.
certified, yes?
Yes.
Is it considered a certification?
Yeah,
I apologize.
NACD.DC is the certification.
Perfect.
Yep.
What led you to pursue that? Just like, what was your background? Like what got you on that path?
Yeah, absolutely. So, David, what got me on that path is a inspiration from another executive in the company. Her name is Mary Nelson, and she is the Chief Customer Officer for Plural Sites now. And she was the first one. She started doing this, and I went to her and talked to her to understand what this program is about. And she explained the insights of that to me, and it sounded really appealing because as a CISO, obviously, I'm influencing the cybersecurity practice of my organization, but to have the ability to influence it from the board is a whole different level of influence that you get, right? So she was my inspiration, and then I talked to also a couple other folks that have done it, and I came to the conclusion that the way the world is changing, cybersecurity would be a good topic for the boards, and for people like myself, it would be good for us to start working towards that goal, that at some point of time in the future, I can be on the boards and I can start to do it. So those were the two influencers on my thinking about an ACD.
And what was the process like?
Yeah,
So doesn't need detail, just kind of give us the overview.
Yeah, absolutely. So the process, they have like training that you have to go through, and you can take it online. There is think about CISSP. Similar to that, there is a question, there is an exam that you have to pass. And the exam, unlike CISSP, this is the difference. The exam that you take for NACD.DC, that exam is very ambiguous. So for logical people, like myself, perhaps like yourself as well, to take that exam is a bigger challenge than doing CISSP.
I'll bet.
Because the answers could be all over the place.
Right.
So that's the thing that I had to master. Fortunately, I had Mary as a good guide and coach along the way. And so she was able to give me some pointers and insight. The things that she was able to help me most with is that comfort with ambiguity.
Right.
And so that's what I took it to the exam. You take the test and you don't get the results back. Again, unlike from CISSP, you know your score. Here, you don't know your score. You just either passed or you failed.
Wow.
I took the test. It took me about 9 months to prepare for it. I took the test and I passed it.
Nice. And then what advice would you give to anybody like me or even people coming up to be CISOs to approach that? Like any advice besides what you've given so far?
Yeah, I would say that don't be daunted by it is probably my biggest advice. When you see it for the first time, you feel like, oh my God, I can't do this. And it appears daunting. But just like anything else, you have to chip at it little by little, little by little, right? And the Taj Mahal would be built over time, right? So that's the mentality that you should take to it. Don't look at it in its entirety and be discouraged by it. Do one step at a time. It took me 9 months, and I was diligent about spending some time on it every day. It took me 9 months, and then it worked out fine. My second piece of advice that I haven't mentioned is find a good coach, someone who has been there, done that. So that guidance was, I can describe how beneficial it was for me, because without that, I would have walked into this test and I would have thought, oh my God.
Yeah, buzzsaw.
Yeah.
All right, so I can't get you out of here without talking about this. So you hold your PhD in computer science. So you really are Dr. Anand.
Yes.
Can you talk about the decision in making that and pursuing that degree?
Yeah. The reason why I wanted to do my PhD was because I wanted to take one problem and take it all the way to the end over years, not over days, not over weeks, not over months, over years. This is the guidance that I got from David Lilja, who was my advisor at University of Minnesota. He said, Anand, the biggest problem in doing a PhD is not to solve the problem. The biggest problem in being able to finish a PhD successfully is how do you scope the problem?
Right.
So he said, like most people spend several years scoping the problem and then 6 months solving the problem and writing their thesis. Okay. So I took his advice to heart and I did that from beginning to end. It was one of the most satisfying propositions of my life. What it taught me was, how do you break down the problem? And I think you have seen some glimpses of that in today's conversation.
Absolutely.
How do you take a large, ambiguous problem? How do you break it down into solvable chunks? How do you scope it in such a way that it appears to be conquerable, right? And how do you stick with it? That's the other big problem, right? I have a very active mind. So it's hard for me to stick with something for a very extended duration. I needed to train my mind to stick with a problem for like 3 or 4 years is what it took me to solve it. So those were kind of my drivers. And I would say that has been one of the most foundational things in my life, in the sense that it taught me patience and it taught me how to think about problems deeply, not just in a shallow way.
I love it. I appreciate that answer. That I think was very insightful for everyone. All right. So it's now time for 10 questions
Awesome.
With Anand Singh.
Okay.
All right. What's your favorite word?
Success.
Success. Love it. What's your least favorite word?
Shaft.
What area of your work do you find most interesting?
Anything that requires deeper thinking.
I can tell that. What area of your work is the most challenging for you?
Where I have to deal with situations where things are not happening because of political reasons, not because of it being the right thing to do.
I thought it was going to be about ambiguity, but
Yeah.
no, I'm just kidding. What sound or noise do you love?
The sound that I love is the wind rustling through leaves.
Yes.
Yeah.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Anything metallic. Yeah.
What's your favorite curse word?
Rhymes with suck.
Okay, gotcha. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would like to be a yogi for a living. Yeah.
Spiritual guidance.
Just spiritual guidance.
Love it. Love it. What profession would you not like to do?
Politics.
I was going to say it's not an indictment on any given, but that might be a good indictment. All right, final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear your God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome to heaven.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Anand, it was an amazing pleasure to visit with you today. Thank you, sir. For my audience, man, what an episode. We covered so much. I mean, obviously, professionalization of the role, what Anand thinks about that. I think artificial intelligence and cybersecurity intersection, great information there. I love how you lay it out. I think, obviously, very easy for a lot of times we go round and round with folks. You just, but man, you laid it out. Helps us quite a bit. Board governance and cybersecurity, great there. NACD, what does that look like? What is that pursuit? Obviously, your PhD, I think there's some wisdom in there. I mean, a lot of wisdom in there, of course. So in the end, friends and colleagues, I renew the call. It's time to professionalize the role of CISO. In the meantime, I wish you health, happiness, and success in your journey in becoming the professional CISO. Let's do this.
We're professionalizing the CISO role, so please subscribe to the Professional CISO podcast.